Hello and welcome to It's Never Too Late, the podcast where we explore these inspiring journeys of women who have embraced change, achieved remarkable things and followed their dreams in midlife and beyond. I'm Claire Roberts-Molloy, midlife mindset coach, and in each episode, I'll be speaking with women who prove that age is just a number and it's never too late to chase your goals. Today, I'm joined by Wendy Garcarz, business strategist, futurist and author. Wendy has more than 30 years' experience working with women business owners in all sectors, helping them create business strategy that achieves growth and success. She helps mature women become more agile in business and less risk averse, learning how to turn their talents into a commercial advantage. She, like myself, believes that age is just a number and it should not limit our aspirations, contribution or ambitions. She recently founded the Refinement UK movement, which is dedicated to redefining retirement for women in the 21st century, challenging negative stereotypes and freeing women to live their lives with purpose and continue to make a contribution. Because that isn't enough, Wendy has published 5 business books and numerous articles translating business theory into business practice. And because that again isn't enough, she's also the author of espionage novels and publishes the Daniel Grant Secret series under the pseudonym of Wendy Charlton. So welcome, Wendy.
Hello, Claire. Lovely to be here.
I'm absolutely delighted to have that you've joined me today. We've met about, it's a year or two ago now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And like we were just discussing before we started recording, there's a lot of similarities and synergies between what we do. So I'm absolutely delighted that you've joined me today. And I've just given the audience a little bit of an introduction about you, but can you tell the listeners a little bit more?
Yes, yeah. I think the first thing that people know about me that have worked with me is that I am a lifelong learner. And that started right from when I was very, very young. I always had a curiosity to know things and to understand how things worked. And I can remember when I was really little, we lived in Walsall and my mum used to take us to Walsall Market at the beginning of the school holidays, the 6-week holidays. And she used to buy a book set. There were 6 exercise books and some coloured pens. And that would be me for the whole of the 6 weeks. So I could keep myself occupied. And it was just from reading and writing and telling stories and stuff. And that's carried me right through my career, whatever I've done. And I've worked with big corporate organisations. I've done huge development programmes, leadership development programmes for the NHS. I've written and delivered master's programmes for Birmingham City University. I've done all sorts of things in my life. But what's sat at the root of that is this curiosity just to find out and also to see what I was capable of. And throughout my career, I've just sort of done that automatically. But what I noticed was as I started to get older, people started to put barriers in the way of me doing that. And certainly after I reached 50, people would say to me, isn't it about time you slowed down? No, I've still got the same brain. I've still got the same energy. But as I've got older, that has increased, which I think is bizarre. I can't understand why people equate age with your ambition, with your capability, with your goals, with with your passions. I just can't understand it. And yet it's really common. And so I just think, do you know what? I'm just going to ignore that. And I'm going to carry on and do the stuff that really floats my boat, really. And I'm still learning. That's the whole point of my journey. I will continue to learn because I believe that people don't grow old. I think they get old when they stop growing. Absolutely. And so for me, it's about just finding things that I find interesting and following that thread until I'm satisfied or find a different thread.
As I said in the introduction, I think there are so many similarities between us, although there's a massive height difference. Listeners won't know that there's about a foot height difference. I think you're 4'11", aren't you? Are you 4'11"? And I'm 5'11". So there's a very big height difference. But other than that, in terms of our values and approach to life, I think we're really, really similar. And one of my biggest values, when people say, what are your values? One of my number one values is curiosity.
Yeah.
Because I think if you keep curiosity at the heart of what you do, as you say, you're always learning, but you're also having the most amazing experiences. Yeah. Because if you're willing to say yes to things, when those doors open, those doors of opportunity, you just never know where they might lead. Yeah. And I'm a lifelong learner. In fact, people tell me, when are you going to stop? And my answer is always, never. Why should I? And I have, as you know, lots of qualifications under my belt, and people say, why do you want to do more? And it's because I love learning. It's simply that. It's not because I think it's going to suddenly make me earn more money or achieve other things. It's because I love the process of learning. So thank you for that, Wendy. It's really, really interesting. But I mentioned in the introduction as well about your new movement that you've started, Refinement UK. Yeah. And I know you've just done a wonderful TEDx talk about this as well. Yeah. So can you tell the audience what that means? Because for some people, that term refinement might be initially difficult to sort of get their head around. So can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I work so much with women business owners, what I'd started to do, particularly in the last 5 years, so I'm 64 now. So just before I got to 60, sort of in my late 50s, I was working with business women of a similar age and finding that they were experiencing ridiculous stereotypes and actually discrimination, and which was making it difficult for them to start and scale businesses. And I couldn't understand this because it just didn't gel with me. So I decided at the beginning of this year I'd do a piece of research, and I just put a questionnaire out through all my social media connections that said, if you're a woman who's over 55 and you want to start or scale a business, talk to me about about your experiences. And if I'm honest, Claire, I would have been thrilled if I'd have got a couple of hundred responses. I had 1,600 women that connected with me and said, gosh, we've got a story to tell. And so I pulled the research together and produced a report called the 2024 Wise Women in Business Report. And in that report, it was the lived experiences of all of those women, of what they'd come up against and the difficulties that they'd faced, and how prescriptive the whole idea of retirement was. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some of those stereotypes, we're tired out, we've lost our ambition, we just want to retire and settle down and spend our afternoons in garden centres or watching afternoon TV. And I thought, whilst that might be good for some people, certainly not good for me. And I know lots of women who absolutely don't want to go down that route. And some of the responses, Claire, were fantastic. I mean, I had a lady who became a TikTok influencer for women's well-being at 73 years of age.
And why not?
Why not? And so I thought to myself, do you know what? I need to publish this report. So I did. And actually, it was what the TED Talk was about. It was about this concept of why do we have to succumb to those stereotypes. But from that, very quickly, it became a sort of zeitgeist in that it's a space where lots of people are starting to talk about it, share ideas, challenge some of those stereotypes. But there was nothing that I could see that was asking that direct question. If we are fired up as women, if we've still got things to prove, things we want to do, contributions that we want to make, how can we do that? And for me, it's always about collaboration. A voice on your own, you're shouting into the dark. But actually, if you come together, you can be a powerful force. So I just decided that I would set up Refinement UK, which is a movement which is dedicated to reimagining and redefining what retirement should look like for women in the 21st century, because the current definition we've got is just not fit for purpose. And so I wanted to be a place where women who had ideas about that and who wanted actively to seek help about being an entrepreneur later in life could come and find that sort of support, that sort of cheerleading, but the practical help as well that they needed. So Refinement UK was born. We're about to trademark it. And we've got lots of exciting things in the pipeline. At the moment, we're very small. We've got a website. I do a newsletter, a regular newsletter. But we've got a programme coming up this year before the end of the year, which I'm really excited to launch, which is going to be looking at successful older female entrepreneurs mentoring younger female entrepreneurs. And when I mean younger, I mean over 50. Because I think that what better way of learning how to run your business than to listen and work with a woman who's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. So that's what Refinement UK is about.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'll ask you in a minute where people can find that report if they want to go away. As I'm sure lots of the listeners now will go, I want to go and find that report and read about it. But did you say a younger entrepreneur is classed as over 50?
It is in my book, yeah.
It is in your book. Yeah, it's okay. I'm just seeing how many more years I've got until I can join that programme.
I mean, you can join the programme at any age. And the reason for that is we might not be 60 now, but one day we will be. And one of my drivers for doing this, Claire, is I don't want younger women coming through who maybe get to that common stage in their career where actually if they've got a corporate career, they've got a bit of burnout, or they suddenly decide now they've got an empty nest, they want to start living their life for them and they don't know how to go about doing that.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to provide a mechanism that helps them think that through and takes that forward. So even if you're not at that age now, you will be at one point. And the more that we can do to stop women have to jump those ridiculous hurdles that we're having to at the moment, the better, really.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this is where we're really similar in sort of our ambitions for women as a total. And a lot of the work I do is particularly around that. It's women who they get past 40, because I find that's usually this sort of mental thing. Your 40th birthday is a really big milestone. And as you say, a lot of women, I see it a lot with my clients who I work with now and clients who I'll be working with very soon. And they have got to, exactly as you've said, Wendy, they've done their career. They've put everything aside. I like to call them lingering dreams, things that you wanted to do as a young person and you've just left on that shelf while you focus on maybe raising a family, building a home and your career. And you get past 40 and you start to feel a little bit disillusioned. You definitely get that burnout. And you're looking for something more. And I think that's the key. It's that something more, isn't it? And so it's great to see that they've got champions. We've got champions like you, Wendy, there ready to help people discover what that something more is. So just quickly tell us, where can we find the Wise Woman report if people want to rush away and download
so
that?
You can download it from the website, which is www.refinement.uk.
Brilliant.
And by signing up, you get the newsletter, which will keep you up to date with everything that we're doing, and you can download the report too.
Fantastic. So if you are listening, it's a brilliant report, so I strongly recommend you go and download that and sign up to the newsletter as well. Now, you've called the report Wise Women in Business, and that word wise, I just want to come back to for a second. When I was in my youth, so when I was in my 20s and just starting out in my career, very, green around the gills, very fresh, very naive, as we all are when we're sort of that age and starting out. And a male director said to me, well, the thing is, Claire, you won't sort of get any respect and people won't take you seriously until you've got some grey at the temples. And this is something I carried for a long time. And I thought, well, women don't tend to go grey at the temples as easily as men. So that's quite a gender-specific reference. But the younger me carried that. And I thought, well, people aren't going to take me seriously until I'm older. And then I thought, but as women get older, we've pretty much thrown out onto the scrap heap at the same time. And you've seen us past it. So where in your view does ageing differ between the genders? And have you found any of that within the research and the report that you've put together?
I think that one of the big challenges is that women are infantilized a lot, so that we are encouraged as women to stay younger for longer. But then once we hit that sort of 40, and I think 40 is a key number, once we hit that 40, we're treated as older, younger, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So I think that our window is much narrower than the way very often that men are treated in terms of their age. And for men, they're treated as sort of wise, if you want to use that word, really as they approach their 40s. Whereas for women, I think that part of the difficulty is that they're never encouraged. They're so busy, focused on keeping everybody else afloat. They're never really focused on themselves. So when we were doing the research and I was talking to women about their wisdom and their skills and their transferable expertise that they'd gathered, it was clearly evident from what they'd done in their lives that they had this in spades. They had massive transferable skill sets. Do you know what was lacking? Was the confidence that they had it. It wasn't that they had it, it was the belief that they had it. And I do think that that's because when you're focused on delivering for everybody else, keeping the school run going, looking after older relatives when there's a problem, holding a job down, keeping the house going, all of those things, organising, doing for everybody else, you lose sight of who you are. And so when you come to your 40s or early 50s, you don't recognise that person. You look in the mirror, you don't recognise that person because you've spent so much time focused on making sure everybody else is all right. You've put yourself at the bottom of your list every time.
Yeah.
And so there is a process that I believe women have to go through as they age about finding out who they are and what they want and what their passions are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my personal journey, definitely hitting my 40s is when I've suddenly thought, actually, I've started to understand who I am and be really, really unapologetic about it. I think that's the other thing. I think we apologise too much as women, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
we apologise for who we are. We apologise for taking up space. We apologise for speaking out. We even start, I'm sorry if this sounds stupid, or, we apologise before we even ask a question. And I was at a networking event recently with a really, really senior leader. What she'd achieved in her career was absolutely amazing. And she was there to tell us about her journey. And I made an observation afterwards because she said she was grateful for all the opportunities that she'd been given. And I made the observation, if it was a male colleague, would he be grateful for those opportunities, or would he believe he'd created those opportunities and earned those opportunities? So I think there's a lot that, there's about recognising ourselves, being unapologetic, and a lot about the language that we use around ageing as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was staggered recently. I saw a really very, very well-known online recruiter, probably one of the biggest recruiters in the country. And I did this table that talked about the ages of people who were looking for the next role in their career. And they had the over 55s as down in decline. Well, I was outraged. I had to write to them. I was outraged because, for me, if you look, when I was little, and I know that's going back a while, but when I was little, a 60-year-old was an old lady. My grandmother, when she was 60, she was an old lady. And then I look around and I look at Cher and I look at Jane Fonda and I look at all of the fabulous women who've learnt to look after themselves because they understand that because we're living longer, the issue isn't ageing anymore, it's longevity. How do we look after ourselves so physically we can last the journey? Because for lots of us, it's into our 80s and 90s and beyond. And I think that because of that, because we've done that groundwork and it's starting to pay off now, I think certainly 60 is the new 40. And I see so many women who want to start that next stage of their life filled with so much vigour and enthusiasm and energy that I don't recognise that as a sort of stage in their ageing anymore. And I certainly don't think they do. So I think that those are the sort of stereotypes and preconceived ideas we have to challenge because I don't think they have any place. I don't think they're relevant anymore in the way that they used to be.
I saw your post about that actually, and it made me feel a little bit sick because I think there's this misconception that your age also equals your experience.
Yes, yeah.
And that isn't true, is it? So you could, I could go and start a new career tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I might have 1 year's experience in that career as a 47, nearly 48-year-old woman. I could have 1 year. Yeah. And there could be a 25-year-old who's done it for 3, 4, 5 years. So they're much more experienced than me, but nearly half my age. But people would look to me because of my age as assuming I'd be the most experienced. So again, I think we need to get rid of this whole concept that because you're older, you're necessarily wiser or more experienced, because you might just be starting out as an entrepreneur. You may just be starting out in any career. So I think that did shock me, and I'd have loved to have read your letter to them.
I think that corporates have got to get their act together, and they've got to get it together really quickly. Because the reality is, if you look at the global picture, if you stand back and look at the bigger picture, birth rates are falling. Now, if they've got skills gaps now, what's that going to be like in 10 or 20 years' time? And if they carry around with them these ridiculous preconceptions about, you've probably done and dusted in a corporate life after you're 45 or 50, where is their workforce going to come from? I mean, it's just a no-brainer to me. And one of the things that I learned, particularly when I worked in public sector organisations, although this isn't exclusive to them, but I did see it frequently, there are two types of people. There are people who have experience. So I'd seen people who had careers, they'd been in their role for about 20 years and they had 20 years of experience. I also saw people doing the same job who'd been there for 20 years, but actually who had got 1 year's experience that they'd repeated 20 times.
Yes.
Now, that's a world of difference.
Yeah.
And the danger of stereotypes is that we miss out on that potential because we make assumptions without testing them out. And I think that's so true around age that, I've met 30-year-olds who are washed out and who are ready to put their feet up and go quietly into the night. And I've met an 80-year-old who was one of the ladies who responded to the research. I met an 80-year-old who has got more energy than some 20-year-olds, and she's ready to keep going. And she isn't going to retire anytime soon because she's got too much she still wants to do. And physically, she's looking after herself to make sure that she can do that. So I do think that we have to challenge some of this. And we can only do that by sharing our stories, talking to each other, and showing people just what's possible.
Yeah. Yes, I understand fully what you're saying about some people in some roles who have just coasted, as you say, they've coasted for a very, very long time, and no one's actually checked on paper. It looks like they're very experienced. So, what advice would you give to organisations who are looking at their succession planning?
I'd say kick into touch any age boundaries that you've put in place and start talking and looking at your people. Because for me, one of the things that happens is, and I think this is around 50, not around 40, but I think around 50, the number of women that have said this to me, I've just lost count of. They say you get to 50 and you realise you don't have to put up with that nonsense anymore. You don't have to spend time with the people that you don't like or who are trying to talk you down. And you have a freedom to be able to just go off and do those things. If you can physically make it happen, then there's nothing stopping you. You have to get out your own way and you have to do it. So for me, the creativity that I see in these women, the resilience that I see in these women is astounding. They've been through all sorts of things, yet they still come out fighting. And I think that unless corporations really start to get a handle on looking at the capability and the characteristics of their workforce rather than their age, it will be very easy for them to lose their competitive edge. Because for me, the competitive edge sits within your workforce in terms of those things, how creative and innovative they are, how good they are at adapting to change, and then how resilient they are. And this assumption that people have that if you're older, you're not very good with change. Well, how ridiculous is that? I can't imagine, well, I can't even begin to list the amount of change that I've seen in my life. You know, I was around when you had to record off the radio the top 10 every week.
I remember that.
On a tape machine.
And trying to miss the adverts and the talking.
Yeah. Won't be tied anybody who knocked the door or who started to talk halfway through. That was like cardinal sin number one. So I've been through a myriad of changes, but my mindset is always great and what's next. And that isn't because I accept change unquestioningly, because I don't. But I am always asking questions like AI. So I know lots of people of varying ages who can't get their heads around AI. And they say to me, how come you're so old and you understand it and you can talk about it? Well, it's because I've found out about it because it intrigues me. But also as a business strategist, we have to understand what the pros and the cons are. And for people who are working in that field, they will always sell you the upside of it, which is great. And there is an upside to using AI, particularly in business. It can help so much with automation and time saving. Fantastic. But it won't do everything. And if you try and let it do everything, you'll come unstuck. So it's about understanding where the positives and the negatives are so that you can make good decisions about it. So these are the stereotypes that I think corporations and us as individuals need to be challenging, because for me, I've still got so much to give, like so many women of my age. I've still got so much to give, so many things that I still want to do. And I'm not going to let somebody else's opinion of what I should be doing shape that, because I've never done that in all my life, as my parents and my husband will attest to. But I just think, you know, we do have to be brave. We have to have a voice. And you're right, Claire, we have to stop apologising. We've earned the right to have that choice, to have those freedoms. But they're no good unless we pick them up and use them.
Yeah. Exactly. And as you were talking there, especially around in corporate settings and building this workplace culture really that embraces innovation, change, and uses its workforce for that competitive edge, it made me think of the other end of the scale, if you like, the young women coming through, those sort of Gen Z and millennials, and there's a lot of press around that. They are approaching work, life, and that sort of work-life balance, if you like, slightly differently, and they are looking for something different. So what advice would you give to younger women, A, and B, how can we, as women who are past 40, approaching 50 or over 60, 70, 80, how can we ensure that we are those role models for those younger women who are perhaps starting out in their early careers now?
What I'm going to say now might be considered to be quite controversial, but it's from my own experience. So what I've always found is that as I look at those younger generation coming through, they've benefited a lot from what has already gone before them. So a lot of the gender discrimination and stuff that we had to handle when we were 16 and just first starting out, actually they don't have to handle in the same way. I won't say they don't have to handle it at all. I just think it's different. But they certainly don't have to handle some of the nonsense that we had to deal with. But what advice I'd give to people of any age, whether you're younger or whether you're in the middle of your life or whether you're approaching the more mature stages of your life, is that nobody owes you a living. That I don't come into any situation with everything that I've done thinking that, I'm Wendy Garcarz, I'm around and about, I've achieved huge things in my life, so I'm owed something. Everything that I have, I've worked really hard for, and I've learned and I've given myself the tools that I need to excel in whatever field that I have chosen. And so it's down to me, really. I can't wait and depend on somebody else to do something for me. I have to go out and make sure I do that. And the best way of doing that is I listen, I observe, and I ask questions. And for me, one of the biggest things around communication skills is that I see lots of people who are full of themselves and want to talk about themselves and what they've done. And that's great. I'm not knocking that. But for me, you get more out of a situation and more out of a conversation or an interaction if you listen and if you ask questions. While I'm asking questions, I am learning, and I will pick something up that I can use to my advantage. It's not rocket science. It's, that's the model I've used all my life, and it's paid dividends for me. And I do think one of the worries that I have with everybody's dependence in a digital world, we cannot afford to lose those conversational skills. We just can't, because they give us so much, Claire.
Yeah.
And I would encourage younger women to work on those things right at the beginning of your career. The better communicator you are, the more influence you have, the more information you have, the more persuasive you can be. So it has to start with you and your approach to gathering information that is going to be useful for you in the future. I've gone through my life a bit like I'm on a walk and I'm picking up, I look on the floor and I'm picking up pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And I never walk past one because you never know. So I pick every puzzle piece up that I see. But until recently, I had no idea what the picture on the lid was. I had no idea. It took me until I was 62 to realise what my purpose in life was, and where I needed to go and what I needed to do. So then I had the picture on the lid. But just think about what I would have lost if I hadn't have picked those puzzle pieces up on the way.
Absolutely.
And so now with refinement, I'm putting all of that together. Everything that I've learned, everything that I've done, there's a piece of that in refinement. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. And it circles back beautifully to curiosity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It does. It comes back to being curious, asking the curious question, and to not be afraid to keep learning, whatever age you are. So thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your story and insights today. It's been absolutely fascinating, as I knew it would be. We could probably chat all day, but we're both very busy. We have a lot to do, don't we, to keep making an impact in this world. So, but before we wrap up, I do have one last question for you. So what's the one piece of advice you would give to anyone out there who feels it's too late to chase their dreams?
First of all, get out of your own way, because that's absolutely not true. If you believe you can or you believe you can't, you will be right. Mm-hmm. So what I'd say to you is change the mindset, reframe that and say, at this age, with all of this experience behind me, what am I capable of next? Yeah. And I never, ever want to be the person, if I'm sitting in a retirement home when I'm 95, I don't ever want to be the person where they look at that and say, oh, look, poor dear, what has she been doing all of her life? I want somebody to come and say, my goodness me, she's not sitting in that chair. Where the hell is she and what's she doing? I live my life and I want others to do the same thing. You're only given one. It's our duty to do what we can with it. And part of that is never, ever lose your curiosity for life, because that's what keeps us going.
Brilliant. I'd love it. I love that. So it's a question, isn't it? What's possible? I think that if you ask yourself what's possible, the answers might amaze yourself.
Absolutely right.
So thank you once again, Wendy. And to our listeners, I hope today's conversation has reminded you that no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to follow your passion and achieve your goals. So until next time, keep believing in yourself and in your dreams. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.